Beloved, hello. I am here. I have arrived. 12 minutes in and ready to rip. Hello. I'm Carper the DM. I am going to be breaking off 90 minutes of highly unrehearsed D&D prep. Hope this finds you well today. It's Wednesday in the year of our Lord and Savior, Donald J. Trump. God's help us. Hold each other close. Hold yourself even tighter. Okay, let's not fall off into some deep pipeline of despair over the reality of the Trump train coming off the rails. And with it, America. But from the ashes, brothers and sisters, let us rebuild in unity and in peace. Whatever remains of it. Fitting that we're prepping some dark sun, right? A ruined wasteland, a fallen world, and likely a future glimpse into America in the year 3100. I'm really into the campaign. I feel like we've been hitting some good mojo, some good momentum, some good stride. But, because so much of it is set in the backdrop of the previous campaign, I really want to, in the first 25 sessions, let's say, pull back in my prep, try to maintain a 10,000 foot view, right? Something that I can do well, but I like to punch in to the specifics, and there will be plenty of time for that. But let's lead up to option one. What's in the box? More appropriately, a circular leather case. In my mind, it was like one of those, slings you'll sometimes see like musicians have. It's like a waterproof leather carrying case, more or less. And we'll discuss my thoughts for what's inside it. The purpose of what's inside it is essentially to aid in a quest to an area known as the Howling Sands. Any campaign, especially in the beginning, is when I think a lot of the tendencies of the DM will make themselves known. I mean, they will throughout, but, some DMs really want to stick to the book, quote unquote, in terms of what they have prepped and planned, or what the adventure guide lays out for levels 1 through 3, or whatever example you want to reference. I tend to be more that way, where I'm kind of like, well, let's just walk it out like it's supposed to be walked out. The other version is some painting similar to starting the campaign, bringing in the players, letting their backstories, their wants and needs dictate the initial action, and thus kind of dictate the first act. Because this is Dark Sun, and because a lot of it is frankly like Homebrew, ported over from the previous campaign and elsewhere, I feel like I want it to be more the former, where I have a good understanding of the first couple major quests, or the big, demands of the situations or the environment and the NPCs in them, in what subsequent action will be elicited. But it's never fun unless the players are having a blast. I really think everyone at the table, certainly DM included, needs to be excited about what's going on. Needs to be feeling it, so to speak. And therefore, we'll prep. We've already talked about a lot of these hooks, but we'll prep some more of them. We'll prep exactly where we'll pick up in session 5. But I hope and expect the party to really have to make their own choice in terms of where they want to go, why they want to go there, and, kind of like big picture overarching desires. Let's meet our cast of characters, shall we? come on down. So we have Morwen, played by the lovely Claire, human spore druid. She basically was, almost died in the Underdark. Her left arm is covered with spores, almost like this weird, is it symbiotic? Is it cobiotic? Like, what's going on? But this mushroom growth on her actual humanoid form. She was found by a Thrycreen by the name of Cricket, who is our ranger, Jesse. And, the two of them more or less helped each other kind of get out of this situation in the Underdark. But Morwen, currently has shown a great love of animals, of snakes, of cats, of the beasts of the land. She has empathy and love for the Thrycreens. I think that could come into play for both of them if, a clutch of Thrycreens are hanging in the balance of a, result or a quest line. That could definitely galvanize them. I also... What else did she have? Oh, yes. That this dark ichor, this sort of strange, coagulation, it nearly overcame her in the Underdark. And that perhaps these mushrooms are a byproduct of that interaction. This druid, this human with a rare connection to natural magic. Something, a very touch-and-go subject in Athos. But I think Claire's character already understands that this ichor that spat forth an ancient, woman and a, large-scale MacGuffin, shall we say, that this dark ichor is of another plane, semi-sentient, and perhaps either, somehow responsible for either threatening or protecting her when she was trapped in the Underdark. Cricket, is, like I said, a Thrycreen, basically an enormous praying mantis, not pictured above me. Don't you dare insult Thrycreen. That's a sand howler. But this Thrycreen, the world of Athos, boasts these sentient insectoids, and they only have a lifespan of 30 years. That's extremely limited and extremely kind of brief. But in that 30 years, every experience, every loss, victory, joy, pain is experienced. So, you imagine the first 30 years of your life, pretty fucking rockin'. But to then have it very sharply and drastically dwindle physically, and have your physicality and vitality kind of fall off a cliff, metaphorically, is not how people usually age. Even humans have a decade plus of descent. Elves have a century. And these Thrycreen sort of live and burn fast and bright. He, Jesse, the character playing, the player character, the player behind the player character, he put his age at 29, 30, right at the cusp of the onset. And within Thrycreen culture, something we established was that there's what did he even call it? A last hunt, sort of a final vision quest that these insectoids are driven out and called to. And that he had just embarked on his was less than a week into it when he came upon this humanoid, unconscious, half grown into the rock and darkness of this Underdark cavern, Morwen. And he saved her life. The two, journeyed to the surface. And I've been traveling for the better part of 2 years. He keeps expecting that cliff to come. And I think a conversation I'll have to have with him. In fact, I was about to pick up my phone and text him right now. I think I will draft a text, but it's some version of, hey, if your age is at 30 and you are, on this last hunt, in the final push of your existence, are you Jesse, the player character, anticipating needing to create another character. So I will text him that on my own time. Our third character is a human warlock, a Templar, an agent of the Sorcerer King. I forget his name. It's down there. It's like Tinnik Titlan from the city of Draj. And he was sent abroad. Potentially exiled? Unclear. Asked to leave. And he was sent looking for anything magical. Magical areas, sentient items, wondrous items, etc. While abroad, he found a Kagan, a Tempest cleric of a certain clan and order that is connected to Campaign 1 and his character there. And ultimately, at night, along the journey, approached by an archfey. And he's somewhat reckless, somewhat prone to selfishness, but also draped in the understanding and language of court, of nobility, of social exchange and etiquette. So, and there's a lot of these type of characters in the game where they're kind of high charisma, high persuasion, deception. But right now, I think for this character, for Rothnael, that he knows eventually he'll have to head back to Draj. And I think that he, with the recent death of the Sorcerer King of Tyr, that there's this power vacuum that perhaps all of the city-states and Sorcerer Kings will attempt to fill. So I know, and something I've talked about with Max, is that his character will eventually be kind of faced with some version of, does your loyalty still lie with Draj? Or does it more deeply lie only with yourself? Probably the second. We've got a half-stone giant, Zathan Kroll. He's from the Forest Ridge, which I guess I'll just go ahead and put that up there. I feel like it'd be helpful. So I can put it in here, eh? Let's go. Smarter, not harder, my friend. Smarter, not harder. Come on. So here we're on the Tablelands. The party is like here-ish. And they are likely going to be sent into the endless sand dunes to the east. This is kind of my map. They are working from a different map, which I'll put up just for comparison real quick. They're working from this one, where the area we just were looks more like this. Right? Not as many details, not as many like city-states and points of interest. Obviously, having two maps is like nothing new, but it's something I would really recommend even for dungeons, because it's nice to know where you have perhaps that loose floorboard that contains a cachet beneath it, or that hidden sigil spell that will cast paralyzation. Those types of things. But Zathan comes from the Forest Ridge, one of the only kind of high plains and wooded areas in Athos. He discovered magic. He's a druid. Sort of revealed himself in a moment of great need where he saved his sister's life. But because of the connotation and the strangeness of it, he was, somewhat ostracized by his family. He left out on his own. This is Rothnael's proper backstory. Then we have Elliot. Elliot is a young bard, human. He was born to merchant parents that lived in Caravanity, the city that we kind of opened just outside and have been, doing most of the action within. And he's, a bit of like a shady dealer, a bit of a, curiosity got the best of the cat type personality. And this is what he sent me a couple days ago, I think right before session 4. So I got a lot of Elliot and Finn after the fact. But let's see, left in charge 3-4 years ago, was to return. They didn't return. Slowly sold the shop into ruins. Scraped a life together by performing, serving as a guide, odd jobs. Mother taught me alchemy. Finn and I practiced unearthing magic secrets. So, I'll be honest, like with Elliot, like I don't know what like Brian the player or Elliot the character view as their kind of end game. I think it's rooted in magical secrets, like some version of exploring this lost and fallen fabric of Arcana. And that's cool, because, while it is a low magic setting, the things that are magical are, like, extremely impactful. So Elliot, I'm not worried because, the way Brian plays, like, we'll be able to have a dialogue and, catch a feel for sort of how and why they see, or how exactly they see kind of the final tableau of Elliot taking place. Finn, young elf, 60 years old, originally brought in and sold to an alchemist inside the city of Caravanity, had a sister before that, has been with this traveling city for, about 50 years. He currently is roommates with Elliot, and whenever Cousin died, he was once, he was sort of a wizard's apprentice to this alchemist almost, but one day Finn was messing around and cast the light cantrip, and magic is forbidden in the city of Caravanity, and he couldn't turn it off, like he couldn't stop the cantrip. And as this light is just filling the space and people are starting to look and the guard are alerted, ultimately the older figure, the gentleman alchemist that owned the house, was fingered and blamed. Ownership of Finn then passed to the man that runs Caravanity, the tradesman. A elusive and poignant figure, known as kind of the final broker. When the world fell, he was set to have and then gather the greatest cachet of magical items still in existence. Now he runs this traveling city where people come and barter and exchange, and must do so in a heavily, overlorded and seen way. But Finn and Elliot kind of entered late in terms of the world building and the, relative to the other characters. But I think will really enter the fray first. Last session, there was the... Let me just bring this over because this is still going on. I think this is different. Yeah, why is it different? I don't get it. Let's make it 12, boys. Bam. So, last sesh, the party had just come across this very special pitcher, like an alchemist jug, obviously of great value in a place like Athos. They then were going before the tradesmen to kind of barter and exchange. And at the very end of it, after there had been quite a bit of hullabaloo, the tradesman who had requested Finn arrive before him in attendance, not knowing that other people would show up trying to sell him something. But he turned to Finn and more or less was like, "Here's the deal. I've got something you gotta do for me. No pushing back. I own you, buddy. You're property of Caravanity. This is what we have to do. We gotta do." And that's what I want to discuss. Because there are many things that, shall we say, trouble the tradesman. How I have it written now, and how I've already established it, and it will have to be some version of this, is that Finn, and by party and deal now, and by obligation rather, the party must go with him as well, are being sent to the Howling Sands, a place of almost kind of like the Bermuda Triangle. It's in the endless sea. It's very much like almost like a sentient dust storm. This moving vortex of sand and wind that occasionally takes shape and form, almost like it manifests itself. And it basically roves the area south of the Mountains of the Teeth, which would more or less be here. While there, they will see both the Crimson Monolith and the Bleak Tower. And there will be other things. Like, we'll probably roll to see what this journey looks like. Maybe they'll come across raiders. Maybe they'll come across a clan of elves. Maybe they'll be attacked by antlions. The random table will establish later, once they're really on the road. But the tradesman, this man whose origin and genesis is as the Shambling Man, a man now some 240 years old, yet seemingly human, impossible. That is because he himself is a fae, taken human form here, and then trapped long ago when he didn't return on time. But he rather likes it. The passion with which many humanoids rush through their lives. And he's always loved strange tchotchkes and elusive, rare little bits, little things, things that can make things other happen, or make you stronger, or someone else weaker. A whole range of cool stuff. That man, the Shambling Man, came to be, very, I was going to say intimate. They didn't fuck, okay? But came to love and be beloved by some members of the party of the last campaign. And the two members of the party, Gleb and Slight, that the Shambling Man had most warmed to, in particular, Slight, who was played by this guy Mike, who is playing now the young elf owned by the tradesman. So it's very full circle. But in particular, this monk, Slight, was beloved by the Shambling Men. And he died an awful death. Was killed, was thrown into a portal to hell, and thus cast down into the lake of fire itself to eternally burn as the chosen and damned champion of the hells, replacing and losing to the BBEG Trent Puergraph. It was a crushing moment, frankly, for everyone. Me, the DM, certainly Slight the monk. But we'll let the past be in the past. However, how that affects us now is that the tradesman, as he is now known, is a man who once was very kind of chummy and sort of jokesy and really seemed to take life on life's terms, is now much harder, violent, cruel, even in a way that would be foreign to someone familiar with his past self. And what most would move a man like that, right? Our big themes are restoring the natural world, restoring the balance of the gods. At this point, the presence of the gods. And then third is sort of some, non-existential threat. Lucaria and the Mages of the White Sun, potential helpers, potential foes. The presence of Telkun, this half-drow, half-fiend that travels in this moving tower and is really the lead instigator in this renewed war of the gods. He kind of tipped the scales and thus began to disrupt the pantheon, upsetting it just enough that then the pantheon descended in on itself. But the tradesman now runs the city of Caravanity. He let's get this here. I really liked, honestly, the reveal of the shambling man as the tradesman was quite fun. Let's see, this is back up here. Don't need that. Got it. So I just want to read a little bit of this. The hell's now Scaravan going. This is just the caravanity stuff. Cool. So you wouldn't really care about the political climate. Great. I love that this is like already how I had it written. Okay. So we're just going to take this. This is exactly what we need. And we'll just sort of chop for a little bit here, right? The lost someone long ago. I like some sort of version of that. Yo, Marie, what's up? Appreciate y'all coming in. Sager, hello. Papa didn't pop out the chat, but I will now. Good seeing you guys. Yo, Marie. Very nice to meet you. Thank you for coming in. All potatoes welcome. But I'm guessing you are a sweet potato. Sage, how are you, my prince? Bugles up. Happy Wednesday, sir. Yeah, I know. I feel like I just shaved. I shaved yesterday, but I am baby-faced. I'm just taking my boys' cheeks and putting them next to mine. Ooh, double cheek. But get in here, guys. Good seeing y'all. We're, it's only going to be session 5 next Tuesday of this reskinned Dark Sun. But on the heels of last session, where the party came before this guy called the tradesman, who is actually the shambling man, and found that he, was a very cruel and demanding person to interact with, wheeler dealer, but one that was not unfair. And I'm now trying to really hone in on why he's sending them to the Howling Sands. But how we living, man? Marie, are you a DM, a player? Appreciate you coming in. I've been so curious and just intrigued by Dark Sun. But this is the second campaign I've run with this crew. We're basically treating it as if this horrible magical mishap happened and transformed over, centuries, the Sword Coast, Faerun, into this broken high desert that is Athos. And as such, some of the through lines and lore from Campaign 1 now have a broken but stretching shadow over Campaign 2. And one of the real, heretofore the prime example of that is the tradesman. A man that, whenever the world fell, he was a broker, a gypsy. I can't say that anymore, but a tinker, shall we say, going around in this enchanted wagon, selling, bartering, but a buyer-seller purveyor of magical items. And as magic was stripped from the world, that monopoly, that cachet, grew all the more powerful. He built a city around it. That city is one of the last free markets of trade. And it is ruled over by him with a bloody and gripped fist. A man that was once kind of a very sort of, a guy that's pretty easy to get along with, hang out. Well, I could do one more. So now he's sort of got nothing to live for, harder. Ain't nothing left, baby. And we ended the last session with them, like, trying to fucking, broker a deal. A DM that loves homebrew. Let's go. Well, I appreciate you coming in. You're in the right place. Yeah, I honestly prefer modules. Because, I'm trying to just, take that stuff. But 80% of what I do is homebrew. I can't quit you, babe. So the why of the Howling Sands is what we're about to get to. The session ended with them agreeing to accompany one of the party members, this elf named Finn, to the Howling Sands. I hadn't gotten into the why of it yet. He is pulling around what looks almost like a flautist's case, like a circular prism made of leather that is going to eventually untie and uncork. Within it will likely be a flute. It's contained within simple brass, much worn around the finger holes. Well made. The sides of it look like scaled wings, extended, then touching where I don't want to call it the flute hole. It sounds a little aggressive, even for Dark Sun. You ever seen a flute hole? I mean, I think, touching where the flute ends, shall we say? Cool. Now, I know this is all just MacGuffin soup right now. But that's probably why we do this. But I have a vision. And it is some vision of this. The shambling man. Now the tradesman. This fey humanoid, trapped here on the material plane, but one that greatly enjoyed his life, now finds the world barren and broken, magic largely drained. And we are our surroundings sometimes. I think he has become this hard, cutthroat version of what he once was. And now he's got this person that he straight up owns, Finn. Member of the party, an elf. He has a world that is ruined, that he loathes. And he has still the lingering sense of loss, the only and perhaps deepest connection he's held with another humanoid, of which he cannot even be really called because he's a fae. But this deep connection with one of the PCs from Campaign 1, the human monk, Slight. I think that when you have everything, or rather at least when you get what you think you want, $1 million, the dream guy girl, the job, whatever, there is then the crashing reality of what it is to experience that, to live that, to execute that. Sometimes that's really fucking easy. Sometimes it is not. But there can be a sense of disappointment, of emptiness sometimes. And I think that's where the tradesman is. He runs like the last trading port. He has the gold, the magical items, the influence, the leverage, the power, unsurpassed only by sorcerer kings, and even then perhaps not, certainly not by all of them. Does he have anyone he feels he can, like, joke with? When was the last time he was excited to see something? Excited to go do something or have a meal with someone? And that kind of draining of color, I think, is comparable to the loss of vibrancy in the world. Many people found themselves pushed into this horrible grayscale that was much worse than it had been, was much less beautiful, was much just less. So perhaps he wants answers. Perhaps he wants closure and connection more than anything else. Materials, pleasures, power, and leverage have blunted their edge on his tongue. What's happening? Marie, let's go. Get in here. Bugles up. Get in here, Ledge. I don't know why, but it's fascinating seeing a fellow DM work. Man, thank you, I think, and I completely agree. We'll have to chop it up. Do you stream, Marie? Appreciate the follow. I interview DMs. That's how I met Sage. Fucking legend. Sage, we got to get you back on between two DMs. But that has been so much fun for me. I mean, to like meet other DMs, to chop it up, but to hear their approach, hear how they prep, hear their likes and preferences, right? Because it's like anything where there's a ton of options. There's like an enormous amount of overlap and then an enormous amount of, specificity. So anyway, appreciate that and appreciate the follow. Well, would you be open to an interview? He has lost what the world lost. He has everything. Exactly. So things that you can't buy, right? Things like closure, things like clarity, peace, connection, joy. He sends them to the Howling Sands because the elf tribe that was just there was coming trying to sell him, the tradesman, some captured drow. Dangerous, given that many of the sorcerer kings are drow. But also trying to broker information as part of the sale. An enormous crimson obelisk, protrusion, this very uniform and hewn red monolith that just vaults out of the sand and has appeared seemingly overnight in this lost area of the endless desert. And the shambling man, if he doesn't like a deal, the tradesman, same guy, but if he doesn't like a deal, he won't take it. And he might just chop your hands off and be like, I'll tell you what, I'll give you what I want. What you offered sucks. I'm going to take two of your hands. Which is, ironically, all of them. And he didn't do that with these elves. Other things had happened that kind of changed the dynamic. He was somewhat impressed with how they had handled themselves. And, yo, Vog! Appreciating you, Ledge. Appreciate you. Love a good lurking work. We're lurking. I love it. You'll catch me lurking, dog. A family that works together, lurks together. You know what I mean? Amen. It was extremely hot in LA over the weekend, and now we're back to like mid-60s. I know I'm in like a casual button down, but it has made my skin very dry. So forgive my ruby red lips. Okay. So the last session ended. The elves were pitching to the tradesmen. The party was pitching to the tradesmen. There was another guy there that I won't bring up the map, but he was there like selling a caged antlion. And he was sort of like a big, kind of like Jimmy's store. There's a big bug I caught out in the sands. I trapped it, see? I put it in a cage, and now it's here before you. So, if you see fit, tradesman, I'd like to broker a deal. And for whatever reason, man, in a way that, like, you know what? It happens in real life. But it happens a lot in D&D games. Where the party just kind of starts, like, shitting on an NPC. You know what I mean? And it was absolutely hysterical. They kept being like, man, the tradesman will cut people's hands off, and, like, you probably should have brought a bigger bug. And ultimately, they were made to fight the bug, and they got the better of it. So the tradesman was like, fuck you. Well, I'm not taking the bug. The bug's out. Yep, your bug got beat up by a smaller bug. So you're out. And instead, the tradesman took the deal with the party. Part of that brokering was, hey, you got to go with Finn to the Howling Sands. And here's why. And I'll tell you next session. And it's because I was like, because we're so early in the campaign, I knew basically I wanted them to go into the Endless Dunes and investigate the Crimson Monolith and come across some other stuff and kind of, be exposed to the world and different elements within it, What's that in normal people, Temp? Hilarious. That's like from 38 to like 26 Celsius. Something like that. Roughly. Roughly. No worries about that. I'm just saying that about the interview. Marie, all good. All good. If you feel like chopping it up, let me know. In Sage, I will drop you a message, my prince. Cool. Will do. Say it one more time. 60. Well, it was more like 67, right? Mid 60s after being like 97, 98, right? I think of 40 degrees Celsius as being about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know if that's exactly correct, but I'm pretty sure they're like right there, right? 40 Celsius is hot as fuck, right? Like the average temp, I feel like, of, Athos is like 48, 50, smoldering. 15 Celsius is mid 60s? Wow. How many Celsius is 68 Fahrenheit? Wow. 20. Okay. So kind of in the middle of that. Cool. Okay. But think about that. From like 38 degrees Celsius to like 20. Right? Oh, sorry. I did both cues. Okay. From 36, 37 to 20. No, all good, Marie. I'm glad we looked it up. But that's a huge swing. 38 to 20? Anyway, your boy's dry, is my point. But to the shambling man. So I know I want him to go. You're going to the fucking Monolith. Let's see if those filthy elves were spinning lies. They said they saw like a moving cloud, a tornado of sand. It was near an enormous red rock, so fucking look for a rock. But he wants more than that. I think that there's an oasis nearby. Hey. More like a fucking drunk. Named Bilbin. He told the poor... Okay. So we talked about the tradesman, right? His connection to members of the previous campaign, that ruined sense of comparable comparison between the world and himself. Bilbin. That's a dive. Exactly, dude. Exactly. Hey, all good, man. Marie, appreciate you coming through. Hope you have a great day. Bugles up. Appreciate the follow. Look forward to seeing you. If you do feel like chopping it up, holla. That could be in 2 weeks. That could be in 2 years. God willing, we're still doing interviews in 2 years, right? We're all just like in line somewhere for water. It's like, nah. We're moving towards a rejuvenation of the world and ourselves. In-game and out-of-game. All right, book it. He told a story to a man who came before me last year. A man with us. A man coming to sell me an even smaller bug than that unfortunate fellow who no longer has both hands. And Bilbin is again like, and it's interesting to me, and like especially if you finished Critical Role Season 3, I'm really curious in your opinion of what I'm about to say. I, of course, like, you know, Critical Role is fucking awesome. I really enjoy it. I've seen a ton of it. Like, I don't even know. I was exposed to Season 2, was watching it, was really enjoying it, was banging through it. It was like in the pandemic. I had so much time. I then ended up going back because I caught up with where they were real time and started listening to Season 1, Campaign 1. Great. So much more raw, but still so much fun and like so much discovery and growth. And, you know, Campaign 3, I think just there was just a lot of elements that just felt really different, right? And I don't want to spend any time like bashing on someone's live stream. Like, they are super talented people and creatives, and they really enjoy playing with each other, and that's super apparent. And it's awesome. Like, we love their content, what they've given us. They've also been handsomely rewarded for that, and that's beautiful. That's kind of the dream. And so I think some of the elements that like maybe disrupted things might have been some version of, you know, no longer live streaming. Like, it's now recorded and they're sort of putting out the streams, right? The recordings. Maybe a little bit of like ennui amongst the cast, but there was so much weaving of previous campaigns into Season 3, into Campaign 3, that I don't know, like, at times I'm like, whoa, that's a deep ass cut. Like, oh, or wow, damn, I forgot they even came here and did that. That's a great callback. But there's also times where I'm like, oh shit, like, that's super convenient, or like, wait, what? Like, there was just a lot of things that just felt really forced to me. And like, dude, again, it's awesome. I'm not saying this to hate. I more am now, as I am turning around and like kind of doing the same thing, wanting to be really cautious about not being overwrought with it, and about not making it seem like I'm just kind of having like a self-indulgent little campaign, you know? So through that lens, I welcome any thoughts, welcome any feedback on that. Especially, again, if you like took in Critical Role Campaign 3. But I think that version of the tradesman that, like, you know, that lost everything, right? Has everything and nothing. Like, forgive me real quick, because we're going to do something buck wild. I'll pull this off over here, right? We're going to do something buck wild. And forgive me, this is going to be buck wild. Okay, this is no joke. Absolutely no bullshit. I've probably watched this 400 times. This to me is some of the best acting ever captured in any medium. The character here that is playing the character of Robert the Bruce, the actor rather, I forget his name. I think it's Ian something. He was brought in to play a different role, potentially, whenever they were first casting the film. And immediately the director was like, actually, I want to see him read this other character, which eventually he was cast in, and now we're about to watch it. It's from Braveheart. This is Robert the Bruce. But this energy of like a sense of loss, a sense of like regret, and perhaps like realizing that the important thing was squandered at your own fumbling, and sort of realizing the full cost of that, price of that, real time. So we're now gonna, oh shit, no. Scusa me. Let's watch this.
I'm the one who's rotting. And I think your face looks graver than mine. Son. We must have alliance with England to prevail here.
The guy's got
You
leprosy.
achieved that. You saved your family, increased your
This is
land.
his dad's like, hey,
In time, you will have all the power in Scotland.
Lands, titles, men, power, nothing.
Nothing.
I have nothing. Men fight for me. Because if they do not, I throw them off my land and I starve their wives and their children. Those men who bled the ground red at Falkirk, they fought for William Wallace, and he fights for something that I've never had. And I took it from him when I betrayed him, and I saw it in his face.
I believe this guy, you know?
And it's tearing me apart.
Well, all men betray. All lose heart.
I don't want to lose heart. I want to believe.
As he does. Good shit. Woo! Is that not the juiciest juice to be squeezed? That's jungle juice right there. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Same energy as the tradesman. Men, power, lands, titles, nothing. I have nothing. There's an oasis. The last stop. The shaky drink. What's it actually called? It's called the last drink? Yeah. We'll call it the shaky drink. I like that more. A little village, a little community there. More like a wash. They haven't been slaughtered. Been slaughtered by now. But I'm looking for a bartender, a dwarf. A dwarf named Bilbin. He told a story to a man who came before me last year. A man coming to sell me an even smaller bug than that unfortunate fellow who no longer has both hands. I would know if his story is true. Bring him to me. And your 180 will be squared. Alive. Cool. This I like. This I like. So now we get to the Howling Sands, right? I think this is like kind of the last thing that he offers, or that he like tacks on to the deal. Yeah. The real reason is the Ashen Land, is this enormous swath that was formerly the High Forest. Dust clouds, storms that come out of the sun itself, heat vortexes. The Howling Sands rest within here. No, actually this will be green, because this is basically like an example in Dark Sun, in Athos, of the way that like not only did magic go awry, but in some areas like a storm cloud, like a thunderstorm, is actually a chain lightning spell that escaped and became manifested and personified, and now roves about the material plane, capable of like tossing out like, you know, lightning bolt like cantrips, or actualizing itself fully as a 7th or 8th level spell, I forget, and creating chained lightning to attack a foe, to attack or affect something. But this strange, like, sentient, somewhat personified magic unraveling that now exists across the natural world in Dark Sun. And one of those, for me, is the Howling Sands. A personified sandstorm. Both marauding and sentient. There is a foe. If I suspect, excuse me, pleasing convergence. Bro, you are about to get perma-banned. You've been blocked. Ooh, man. Whew. What a rush. Enormous power there. You've been banned, sir. You've been banned. But the Howling Sands... So this is going to need a little bit of work, and I'm pausing because I'm needing to kind of think this through. Let's look at it on the map, huh? So the Howling Sands are like here-ish. They're all over the map. No, they're like here. You know, huge swath. And does this have a scale on it? Yeah, it does. Great. Okay. Just give me any character. We'll use Dark Step because I can make him a big square. Perfect. Cool. So Dark Step we'll put at 75 miles. Ish. So more like 80 miles. Cool. 80 to 60. Okay, cool. I told them last time it was probably like 300 miles. Looks like it's more like 150, 200. Good seeing you, Dark Step. So down here we've got like this crazy ass shit. This is all for me, like areas that were formerly the Underdark. Now the Drow are at the surface, and like the Hells sort of have taken over that space. I think there's a lot of death. I think there's a lot of like necromancy, shadow work, etc. The Crimson Monolith is going to be connected to the astral plane, a group of travelers that came here looking for reasons why their world, much like Athos, is now drained, now devoid of growth, of abundance, of magic. This will hopefully like be a cool encounter and sort of a fun like dungeon and stuff, but it will introduce the fact that people have kind of come and gone physically, traveled from the astral plane to this material plane and vice versa. Something that hopefully will be a big part of like Act 2. So I do want to like sprinkle in a bit of that. But the idea is that they have this flute, and the flute, in my mind, like either allows passage through the Howling Sands, or like can potentially kind of put it at bay, almost like tame it. And in my mind, the center of the Howling Sands is like either a humanoid, some strange like old cursed druid, you know, something like that, or perhaps a physical object, like it's a statue or a small little house that once contained a magic user, and upon his death and with the great loss, like this chaos just happened. But for me, I think it needs to be tied to a druid that lost their way. Something like that. But where I am, and why I'm sort of, I think, kind of hesitating now and previously at the end of the last sesh, is because I know what's going on in the Howling Sands. It's also called the Ashen Land. There's like this undead elf. Unclear, like what's going on with this guy. And he is basically like a lich from campaign 1 that is now kind of lording over this like plane of dust and sand and death. And this was a discourse from a couple of prep streams ago, but the idea that Stefan turned, that this lich that had unfortunately kind of been the final kind of death blow to to campaign 1. But that Stefan turned, that any lich so do we have a in my mind just now I was like, he's an elf. But I'm like, is he actually an orc? Drinking from the bloody pool. God, I haven't been in this document in a long time. Sesh 153. This is like right before this like partial PPK. Partial party kill. Man. I don't even know why I'm doing this to myself, but ay. The orc Stefan turn. Yes. Cool. So he is an orc. That I like. Okay, an undead orc, right? Now we're fucking cracking off. So that's why I brought up the whole like Critical Role Season 3, Campaign 3. Is like, especially early in Campaign 2 for me, I don't want to like just be, I just revealed that the Shambling Man is the tradesman. Like, I don't want them to think like, okay, are we just doing Campaign 1 again? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you want us to find Bilbin and fight a lich? We just did this, dude. This was awful. So of course, like, I don't want my party to not enjoy their time, but like, this is kind of, in my mind, perhaps an opportunity to come back to the Dark Ichor, to show that when the great loss happened and magic was sapped from the world, that arcane magic snapped and exploded inward, and disaster struck from enchantments and arcane magic and anything connected to that type of arcana flow. Divine magic at first remained kind of unaffected, but then as the pantheon started to wobble and then shriekingly roll out of balance, the power and connection of the gods became destabilized. But natural magic, right, like druids and rangers, but mostly druids, natural magic was a slow and painful deterioration as the landscape, as the moon stopped phasing, as the seasons stopped phasing, and this fertile land of Faerun became this dry, cracked wasteland of Athos. Over the course of that, the impact and efficacy of natural magic waned before snapping away for some people entirely. And in an attempt to reverse this, to protect this, some natural magic practitioners attempted to drive back this blight, this unknown force. And in doing so, both opened the door and allowed in, but also almost gave sentience to the Dark Ichor, this manifestation of the War of the Gods in the astral plane has now cracked into the material plane and moves through it like a black ooze. So I think that the Dust King, I think that a lich that previously was like trapped in an old mine and lorded over a bunch of undead and fucking hated this guy Telkun that tricked him, I think now he's out and about. He's like, oh wow, the whole world is death. Let's fucking get it. And I don't think it's quite on the level of the Shambling Man, but I think there is a sense of like, it's not what he thought it would be. And I think perhaps there's an awareness that his own like undeadness is perhaps the state that will affect the world of Athos. I think at its center, it's a small wooden hut. Thatched roof. Within it, this is such a tough call for me. Like, what I don't want to do is like throw down just a ton of extra bits. Like, we have so much established in terms of like what's interacting, what's going on. The Dark Ichor comes from the astral plane. It's a result of the rise of the old gods, the cruel gods, the sort of war of the gods that then kind of fell inward on itself. And I like the idea that in the same way that loosed arcana can sometimes gather in the land of Athos, a firestorm might erupt that was just a fireball spell that finally had had enough and detonated and exploded. But that in similar ways, when this dark ichor, this sort of sentient astral ooze, comes into contact with the material plane, with the natural world, that it can lead to these strange, like, irregularities. Water flowing in reverse, trees growing with their roots upside down. But here, this, like, whipping sandstorm that never ceases, never stops. And in its center, I like the idea of a small wooden hut, one thatched roof, a still burning fire with a small kettle on it, and bubbling out and over the edges of the kettle. It's a thick, dark substance. The dark ichor seeping in from the material, from the astral plane. Now this, for me, I think Mildred Backbrook stayed here several weeks. She journeyed from Everland to the grandfather tree. This is now tying in nicely to what just happened. I love it. She prayed to every old god she knew. But heard only from Maliki. Vision, crowned stag, bounding over ash and flaming rock. And I think again, Mildred will appear here. Now, getting to the Howling Sands will be at least, I think, like 3 to 5 sessions. Just given the nature of, like, it'll take them forever to get out of Caravanity. You know, we're going to do this to just, you know, stuff will come up naturally. The party, of course, could just pivot and, you know, fuck off on the tradesmen and be like, we're not doing it, you know, in which case they would make a very powerful foe. And if they ever show their faces again, would likely pay a heavy price. But I like the fact that they just saw Mildred. They know that she is, like, sucked into this dark ichor. The dark ichor itself has seeped into the walls of Caravanity, and that here the dark ichor has grabbed and now almost like imbued this small hut. And the wind around it almost works as an extension of it, semi-sentient, taking different forms. So we have, you know, connecting to the Four Sisters, we have the through line of the natural world being thrown into imbalance by this war of the gods. And we have a further result of that, the dark ichor, sort of, you know, being there, being the source of it. That'll be an opportunity for them to, I think, chop it up with Mildred again, perhaps be like, what do you want? I'm sure they'll be like, Mildred, what the fuck do you want us to do with these rings? And that quest line can be furthered there. But I think that let's think about now, like, what else would be happening in a land with things like the Howling Sands, in a place where the astral had, this corruption had seeped into the material plane, and now the natural world, you know, was even more irregular, other than the fact it was just dry and dying. What would it be like for herds of animals? What would it be like for those kind of, like, surface dwellers that are, you know, either Thrycreen or subterranean humanoids? And that this entire land, aka the Endless Dunes, right? What else is it called? Yeah. Endless Dunes. Cool. Yeah. So I think another effect of that would be like, if there is an oasis, there probably would be a very tight-knit community. They probably have a very specific way of defending themselves, maybe pulling everything inside and underground, right? Maybe a bit of a like, we'll wait it out. But if there is an oasis, how would that not be overrun by the Dust King and this marauding group of raiders, right? So that's a question to be answered. I think I have a couple like immediate ideas, but that's less important to me than really continuing to finesse how this quest will be presented to the party by the tradesmen. So the Howling Sands are this personified storm. If they do pursue it, they'll come to find out that it's another like semi-sentient like space that's corrupted by the dark ichor that within it holds Mildred Backbrook. That's just sort of a big kind of hopefully a big arc of the campaign are these four sisters, the rings they had, and the fact that they can activate this telescope that is both a weapon and a remote viewing device. But if the tradesman wants them to go there, to the Howling Sands, I think, the why of it is very important. And, part of it is these elves just showed up trying to sell him information on the Crimson Monolith. I think there's a little bit of like, well, let's fucking see. Were they telling the truth? What's going on? Perhaps he also has heard about this personified storm. And then lastly, has now heard 3 evocative tales, all from these southern wastes. Crimson Monolith. From the Darkstep Elves. The Howling Sands. A personified storm. And a story told named Bilbin. So I think it's one of those things where the tradesman's like, 1 time, maybe it's interesting. 2 times, that's a coincidence. But 3 fucking times, I gotta check it out. And if I'm checking it out, that means I'm actually just sending somebody else to check it out, and that's you. And I'll be damned if they don't do it. But I think they will. So we got a good amount down today. We didn't necessarily get all of the specifics hammered. But that's because it's quite hard. But I like where we are. I like that this pulls us closer to the Dust King. This man that hates Telkun, who hopefully will be a major antagonist in this campaign. It pulls us closer to the Crimson Monolith that connects us to the astral plane, and that kind of through line of the campaign being, showing that, man, some areas of the astral plane were affected, like the planes are in balance. But it also then just has that kind of nice little fringe of connecting us back to campaign 1. Okay. Good stuff, guys. Didn't quite get to my guys, the Sand Howlers, but we will. They're pictured above me and now on the screen again. Oh, but I love y'all. Appreciate y'all coming through. Marie, thank you for the follow. I know you're out of here. Vogue, thanks for coming through and lurking. Sage, my guy. Thou art my guy. And anybody else, that came in here in secret. I love a good lurk. Okay, shall we? I think if we can, guys, if you have just a quick moment, we're going to raid somebody. I know there's 4 of us? Cool. Let's just pop in, say hi. Campaign chit chat, this is great. So we're going to pop in on Max and Robbie. See how they're doing. I think they're talking about a campaign they're running. I'm not really sure. But I will be back next Wednesday. I'm trying to figure out exactly... I want to stream twice a week. I'm not sure what that'll look like. If it'll be every other or I'm not sure. But bear with me on that. It'll likely be back on Fridays. Maybe streaming some Elden Ring. I have some loose plans to maybe stream me karaokeing my own Coconut Island album, which is forthcoming. So a big maybe on that. But regardless, next Wednesday, see you there. As always, guys, take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. Smooches. And say hi to Max.